Whoa. All right, here we go. We are now in the next period of history called the Exile. This picks up the struggles of the southern kingdom when Babylon rose to power and sent the people into exile for 70 years. If you see here, the color of the exile is blue because they are singing the blues. The main book is Second Kings, and you could see a bunch of the supplementary books are over there. The one that's hard to read first, up here where my cursor is at, says Tobit, Nahum, Zephaniah, Jeremiah, Habakkuk, Daniel, Lamentations, Baruch. These are prophets who would also, along with the people, be cast into exile and set for 70 years. So their prophecies sometimes feel very grim. Their words are very hard for the people to hear because they're in exile, lost, feeling like they're abandoned, and the prophet's core message is, but wait, have hope someday. Maybe not in your lifetime, but someday, if you're faithful, it might be in your children's lifetime. God will honor his covenant promises, no matter how much we fail to live according to them. So get this stuff down and let's move. Let's go on. Here it is. While in exile, one of the prophets, Daniel, grows up in Babylon, and like Joseph from back in the days of Egypt, would be in prison and eventually rise in the ranks and become like the king's right-hand man, a foreign king, and he would begin to interpret dreams. So it says Daniel, please write that down. Daniel interprets Babylon, these dreams that the king has, and in the interpretation it says Babylon will be replaced by 5 empires. The spiritual reading that we know is Christ will remain when all these other empires fall apart. So the king has this dream of like a stone, of a huge giant statue, and the statue has a golden head, a silver torso, like brass thighs, an iron leg, and iron and clay feet. And Daniel interprets this prophecy. Let's look at the interpretation here. Please write this down. First, the gold is referring to the Babylonian Empire. The golden head is referring to the Babylonian Empire. So the king is interpreting, has these dreams, and Daniel's like, okay, king, that golden head you see, that's you. That's your empire. And that makes him feel good because gold is very valuable. Next, though, is silver, and Daniel prophesies that the Persians will rise to power and replace you, Babylon. And an inferior kingdom shall arise. It is pretty remarkable that the Persians were able to knock out the Babylonians. And then Daniel says to the Babylonian king, and the Greek Empire will rise after that. This third kingdom of bronze will rule over all the earth. Next is the Roman Empire of iron. And last, if you know Roman history a bit, the empire crumbles and is replaced by a republic for a short period of time before it's destroyed. But let's look at that. Iron with iron, legs of iron with feet of iron and clay. There's a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. The feet and toes are partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, show it to be a divided kingdom. So the Roman Empire has its own fissure and divides and turns into a republic. And lastly, the only thing that remains is a stone cut by no human hand. I say a stone, think of a rock, and think of what Jesus called Peter and what he promised Peter. If you were in class the other day, where we talked about Matthew 16:18, where Peter professes that Jesus is God, and then Jesus says to Peter, and you are rock, and on this rock, this stone, the gates of hell will never prevail. Okay, let's move on. Next is the prophets and the promise. This is in this period, the prophets, it's not quite a covenant, but the prophets are pointing back to the covenant with David and pointing forward to a promise. That's the the whole thing that the prophets could be summed up in. They're trying to remind the people that the promise God made with King David and the temple will someday be fulfilled. So the prophets proclaim a future David, a future king like David, but whose throne will be unending and everlasting. The prophets proclaim a future temple that'll be universal. It will fulfill what the Davidic images were for the temple. It will become a reunion, a worldwide, universal, one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And then they claim that someday the law will not be written in stone tablets like the Ten Commandments, but will be written in our hearts. That the Word will become flesh. All right, that's the end of the exile. See you in the next video.